Welcome to Once Upon a Classic. You're about to experience an abridged audiobook of Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, brought to life with evocative illustrations that appear as the story unfolds. Settle in, let the lights dim, and allow this Gothic tale of mystery and vampires to draw you in. If you enjoy the journey, please like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss our next release. Tell us in the comments which abridged classic you would like to hear next. In the deep forests of Styria, Laura and her father live a quiet, comfortable life in their ancient castle. Though their income is small by English standards, here in this remote, picturesque land, it feels almost luxurious. Laura's father, a kind Englishman, retired from Austrian service and bought this solitary schloss surrounded by miles of shadowy woods, glittering streams, and drifting water lilies. The closest village is miles away, making their world an isolated realm of stone towers and Gothic arches softened by familiar routines. The household is small, just Laura, a girl of 19, and her aging father. Laura's mother died young, and since then, Madame Perrodon, warm, stout, ever smiling, has taken a motherly role. Mademoiselle de La Fontaine, the polished and precise finishing governess, rounds out their odd little family, where French, German, and English tangle together like the forest paths outside. Occasionally, Laura's friends visit, offering a breath of excitement, yet most days drift by quietly. Laura free to indulge her whims under her father's constant, gentle leniency. Yet it's not mere routine that lingers in Laura's memory. She recalls, with a vivid shiver, the strange event of her childhood, the first moment fear truly entered her life. When she was 6, she woke alone in the nursery, both nurse and maid missing. Instead of being afraid of the dark, neglected, she felt annoyed and began to whimper. Suddenly, a beautiful young woman with solemn eyes appeared at her bedside. Laura studied the stranger in wide-eyed wonder as the lady gently stroked her and slipped beneath the covers, soothing Laura with quiet affection. Comforted, Laura quickly drifted off, only to wake with a sharp, agonizing pain in her chest, like 2 needles had pierced her. Screaming, she saw the young woman's intense gaze before the figure vanished, seemingly sliding under the bed out of sight. Her terrified cries brought the household running. Though they tried to reassure her, Laura noticed fear flickering in their faces as they checked every hiding place. The housekeeper murmured to the nurse, "Someone did lie there. The bed is still warm." The nursery maid fussed over Laura, inspecting her chest for marks, but found nothing visible. That night, guards were set. From then on, a servant always stayed in Laura's room at night, at least until she was nearly grown. She became nervous and clingy, even in daylight, and the family doctor, pale, pockmarked, and draped in a brown wig, visited often with his medicine. Her father tried to comfort her by day, sitting at the bedside with a gentle laugh. "It's nothing but a dream. No need to be frightened, my dear." But Laura knew it hadn't been. The nursery maid insisted, "Don't fret, it was me. You must have been dreaming, not recognizing my face." Even as the nurse agreed, Laura knew their voices held something unconvincing, as if concealing more than they said. Later, a kindly old priest in a black cassock came to her bedside, leading a quiet prayer, his gentle manner lingering in Laura's memory more than any sense of holy power. He cupped her small hands in his own and encouraged her, "Just say, 'Lord, hear all good prayers for us, for Jesus' sake.'" Afterward, the memory of that night, and the strange visitor who brought fear into her safe, shadowy world, became the earliest, sharpest moment she could recall. Everything before and even after blurred into darkness, except for those distinct, haunting scenes. On a golden summer evening, Laura and her father wandered through the lush woods surrounding their castle, lost in conversation about the guest whose arrival had been delayed. General Spielsdorf, a family friend, had promised to visit them with his charming niece, Bertha Reinfeldt. a prospect that had filled Laura with eager anticipation for weeks. But as they walked together beneath the lime trees, Laura's father gently broke the news that Bertha was gone. The sadness in his eyes matched the sunset's fading warmth. "Not till autumn. Not for 2 months, I dare say," he said of the General's visit before adding gravely, "and I'm very glad now, dear, that you never knew Mademoiselle Rheinfeldt." Laura felt a thudding sense of loss, especially when her father handed her the General's distraught letter, full of anguish and hints of some mysterious cause behind Bertha's tragic death. The letter spoke of betrayal, of lost innocence, and a shadowy evil lurking beneath the surface of seeming friendship. Lines like, "The fiend who betrayed our infatuated hospitality has done it all," lingered on Laura's mind, casting a pall over the tranquil landscape. The melancholy deepened as they strolled back towards the Schloss. On the drawbridge, the duo met Madame Perrodon and Mademoiselle de La Fontaine, who had ventured out to soak in the moonlight. The sight of the mist over the meadows and the silvery gleam on the water momentarily distracted Laura's heavy thoughts. The governesses chatted animatedly, Madame Perrodon sighing with romantic delight, and Mademoiselle de La Fontaine launching into tales of the moon's mystical powers and its effect on dreams and minds alike. "The moon, this night," Mademoiselle mused, "is full of idyllic and magnetic influence. Look how the castle windows sparkle, as if the rooms are waiting for fairy guests." Though Laura was quiet, her father broke the silence, quoting lines from Shakespeare about an unnamed sadness burdening his heart. "I feel as if some great misfortune were hanging over us. Perhaps it's the General's letter." Suddenly, distant carriage wheels stirred the night. Soon a splendid coach drawn by 4 horses appeared atop the bridge, flanked by horsemen in livery, a rare spectacle for the lonely estate. But excitement turned to shock as the horses panicked, bolting in terror. The carriage careened wildly, the terrified shrieks of a young woman inside echoing across the meadow. In an awful moment, the carriage struck a tree root, tipping onto its side. Chaos erupted as the travelers and household rushed to help. Out of the wreckage, an imposing lady emerged, her features proud despite her distress. She was tall, regal, and dressed in somber velvet, worry etched across her face as she watched her pale, unconscious daughter being lifted from the carriage. Laura's father, always quick to offer aid, examined the girl and reassured the lady, "Her pulse is faint, but she will recover." The stranger, wringing her hands, cried, "Here am I on a journey of life and death. To lose an hour may cost us everything. I must leave her. Oh, how can I leave my child behind?" Laura, hope flickering, whispered to her father, "Oh, Papa, pray ask her to let her stay with us. It would be so delightful. Do pray." Her father responded graciously, offering not only shelter but care worthy of the trust placed in their hands. "If Madame will entrust her child to us, it will confer a distinction, an obligation we will cherish." Torn, the woman hesitated, then took Laura's father aside for a low, intense conversation, her stern expression replacing the earlier theatrics. Whatever was whispered remained between them. Laura could only guess at its urgency. Finally, the lady knelt by her daughter, offering a hurried blessing and kiss before departing. With the carriage righted and the horses calmed, she swept away into the night as suddenly as she had arrived, leaving her daughter a stranger, beautiful and fragile, in Laura's world. The girl's impending presence promised to break the old routines and ripple through the safe, familiar rhythms of the castle. As the carriage faded into the mists and the last echo of hoofbeats vanished into the woods, a delicate tension lingered among those left behind. The unconscious guest slowly stirred awake, eyes fluttering with confusion and loss. "Where is Mamma?" she asked plaintively, her voice as soft as water over pebbles. Madame Perrodon soothed her gently, explaining the accident and her mother's sudden departure. Each question about the carriage, home, and a missing servant was answered with patient care, until the girl, piecing together the night's events, quietly began to sob upon learning her mother would not return for 3 months. Laura, burning with curiosity and sympathy, was held back from further comfort by Mademoiselle de La Fontaine. "Only one visitor at a time, my dear. Too much excitement may overwhelm her." Laura ceded the moment, but resolved to visit as soon as the doctor allowed. Servants hurried to prepare a bedroom while a rider was dispatched for the physician. The household, buzzing with excitement, settled into their opulent drawing-room, its ancient tapestries and crimson velvet glowing in the candlelight, to discuss their midnight visitor. "How do you like our guest?" Laura asked as Madame Perrodon returned. "She's lovely, gentle, beautiful, about your age," Madame replied, her face brightening with maternal affection. "She has a remarkable voice," said Madame, "and her eyes, so earnest." Mademoiselle de La Fontaine added a note of unease. "Did you see the woman in the carriage, the one with the colourful turban?" With a shudder, she described a grim, grinning figure, watching them with unnatural, gleaming eyes. The staff who accompanied the carriage, she noted, appeared just as sinister, lean, sullen, wicked-looking. Laura's father agreed, frowning. "Ugly set. I hope the poor lady isn't robbed in the woods by her own men." The conversation turned with a nervous laugh, curiosity building about the secrets exchanged during the mother's brief private talk with Laura's father. That same evening, Laura pressed him for details. He explained the woman's reluctance to leave her daughter, noting, "She insisted the girl is delicate but sane, and begged us not to ask questions, to let her origins remain secret." He relayed the lady's urgent words. "I'm on a journey of vital importance. I shall return for my child in 3 months. Until then, she must tell no one who we are." He shrugged, feigning lightness, though his eyes hinted at lingering doubts. Laura, for her part, was elated. To have a stranger, young, mysterious, and beautiful, was a rare thrill in the isolated estate. The night lagged until the physician, grave but kindly, declared the girl well enough for company. Laura hurried to the guest's room, noticing the stately gilt and sombre tapestries, her nerves tingling. The girl sat up, swathed in a soft dressing gown. Laura approached, only to freeze. The face before her was the very image that had haunted her dreams since childhood. Beautiful, melancholy, unforgettable. A charged silence passed, broken by the girl's astonished exclamation. 12 years ago I saw your face in a dream, and it's haunted me ever since." Stunned, Laura replied, "I, too, remember you. I could not forget your face." The strange recognition quickly melted into warmth. The two recounted their shared dream. Laura as a frightened child, her visitor as a little girl lost in unfamiliar rooms, both seeing and reaching for each other across time and sleep. "If you were less pretty, I might be afraid of you," the guest teased, cheeks flushed, "but perhaps we're destined to be friends." She gazed at Laura, eyes alight with hope and an odd longing. For Laura, curiosity mingled with an unexplainable pull and a subtle pang of wariness. Still, her fascination won out. As exhaustion crept over the girl, Laura bid good night. The guest refused the company of a maid, confiding, "I am haunted by robbers. Old habit, forgive me. I lock my door." She embraced Laura, whispering with quiet urgency, "Good night, darling. Tomorrow, but not early, we'll see each other again." Young hearts, drawn by instinct, blossomed into attachment with shocking speed. The next day, in daylight, Laura found her new companion even lovelier, and their fears of the night easily dismissed. Both confessed to a strange dual attraction and a fleeting, mutual unease. They laughed together, the memory of their shared vision now forging the beginning of an intense friendship. Carmilla quickly became part of Laura's daily life, her presence a source of beauty, intrigue, and a stirring unease. She was tall, slender, and startlingly graceful, with dark, shimmering hair that Laura would braid and marvel at. Despite her languid movements, there was no clear sign she was truly ill. Her eyes were luminous and often fixed on Laura with an unsettling intensity. As Carmilla reclined in the sunlight, their conversations would drift between light teasing and deeper longing, her words trembling with a mixture of affection and something hidden beneath. Yet, for all her warmth, Carmilla remained secretive. She shared little about her family, only that her name was Carmilla, her ancestors were ancient and noble, and her homeland lay far to the west. She sidestepped questions with gentle sorrow. "Dearest, your heart is wounded. Think me not cruel because I obey the irresistible law of my strength and weakness. Trust me with all your loving spirit," she whispered, holding Laura close. The affection soothed Laura, yet left her with a flicker of fear and confusion. Whenever Laura attempted to delve further into Carmilla's past, her friend would deflect, never angry, only evasive. "You shall know all in time," Carmilla promised, kissing her cheek. These words entranced Laura, leaving her oddly weak and peaceful, afraid to break the spell despite moments when she recoiled from Carmilla's intensity. In those passionate times, Carmilla's embrace grew fervent, her gaze heated, and her lips pressing fervidly to Laura's skin. "You are mine, you shall be mine, you and I are one forever," Carmilla would murmur. It was both intoxicating and alarming, and Laura often wondered, were they merely close friends, or was something else lurking beneath? Laura's attempts at reasoning failed to illuminate Carmilla's strange moods. A masquerade, a momentary madness. Sometimes Laura wondered if her companion was simply eccentric, but the thought wouldn't settle. Daylight exposed another side of Carmilla. The languor, her late-rising skipping breakfast for a single cup of chocolate, and a hesitance even to saunter around the estate. Whenever Laura wished to wander farther, Carmilla wilted and would rather rest on a bench, her energy spent. Still, her conversation was lively and intelligent, her stories occasionally drifting to cryptic memories of a homeland more distant than Laura had expected. On one walk, a peasant girl's funeral procession passed by. Laura stood in respect, joining the hymn, but Carmilla seized her arm. "Don't you perceive how discordant that is?" she snapped, covering her ears. Laura insisted the hymn was beautiful, but Carmilla's agitation grew. "How can you tell your religion and mine are the same? Your forms wound me, and I hate funerals. Why, everyone must die, and all are happier when they do. Come home." Curiosity piqued, Laura explained it was the funeral of a girl who claimed to have seen a ghost and died a week later. Carmilla forbade talk of ghosts, then, her mood darkening, gripped Laura's hand. A strange, fevered fit overtook her, her face waxen, muscles tensed in agony. "There, that comes of strangling people with hymns," Carmilla gasped as the episode ebbed, then soon recovered her usual poise. That evening, a familiar sighting brought distraction. A hunchbacked showman, long known in the household, arrived with his oddities, a fiddler, peddler, and conjurer all in one. He entertained Laura and Carmilla with wild antics and curious wares, including amulets to ward off the mysterious deaths plaguing the countryside. Mockingly, he offered to file down Carmilla's sharp little tooth, earning her brief ire, her face flushed with rage, but as quick as it came, her temper faded. Laura's father, somber, shared troubling news that another young villager was succumbing to the same strange illness, attacked, like others, by an unknown force at night. "All this has natural causes," he explained, blaming fever and superstition. "But that very thought frightens one," Carmilla replied, shuddering. They spoke, briefly, of fear and death. "Are you afraid to die?" Carmilla asked. Laura confessed she was. Carmilla mused, "Girls are caterpillars, and finally butterflies when the summer comes." Later the doctor arrived. an elderly, wise man, grave yet kind. Laura overheard him and her father discuss strange maladies and mysterious happenings, their words shadowed with suspicion. Life and death are mysterious states, and we know little of the resources of either, the doctor said cryptically. All the while, the mysteries deepened. Strangers died, Carmilla's moods flickered, and Laura lingered, caught between friendship, fascination, and the unspoken dread threading their days together. A new arrival from Gratz brought excitement to Laura's quiet home. A dark-faced young man, son of the famed picture restorer, had delivered 2 large wooden crates packed with old family portraits. As servants and family gathered for the unveiling, Carmilla watched with outward indifference. The hush in the hall grew as each canvas, long cloaked in dust and shadows, was revealed, revealing faces Laura had never seen so vividly before. Her father read from a list, matching names to portraits. "There is a picture I have not seen yet. It is labeled Marcia Karnstein, 1698. I am eager to see how it has fared." The picture was small, nearly square, so smudged by time that Laura had barely noticed it before. When the restorer finally produced it, wiped clean and gleaming softly, Laura's heart nearly stopped. Staring back from the canvas was none other than Carmilla herself, alive, smiling, almost ready to speak. Even the delicate mole on her throat was there. Laura turned, breathless. "Carmilla, dear, look. This painting, it's you. Isn't it beautiful, Papa? Even the little mole." Her father chuckled, distracted. "Certainly, a wonderful likeness, though you girls are fanciful." He quickly returned to confer with the artist about the other paintings. Laura, transfixed, could not look away. She pleaded, "Papa, may I hang this in my room?" He granted her wish, smiling at her enthusiasm. Carmilla, however, seemed strangely detached, her eyes distant and unfocused as she gazed at Laura, as if through a veil of private emotion. When Laura pointed out the name in the corner, "It's not Marcia, but Merkela, Countess Karnstein, with a coronet in the year 1698. Carmilla's interest perked, but only languidly. "I think I am descended from the Karnsteins too," she mused. "Are any left?" Laura answered, "Only ruins of the old castle remain, 3 miles away. The family line is gone." Carmilla's response was slow, almost distracted. "How interesting." Then she abruptly shifted the subject, suggesting a walk in the moonlight. Arm in arm, the girls wandered outside beneath the stars. Laura, still enchanted by the portrait, whispered, "It feels just like the night you arrived." Carmilla's voice dropped. "Are you glad I came?" "Delighted, dear Carmilla." Their closeness was palpable, heightened by the silver glow. Carmilla, resting her head on Laura's shoulder, murmured, "I have loved no one, and never will, unless it's you." Laura wondered at the heat in Carmilla's gaze and at the tremor in her touch. Carmilla pressed close, her breath warm against Laura's neck. "Darling, darling, I live in you, and you would die for me. I love you so." At these fervent words, Laura recoiled, both drawn and alarmed. Carmilla's vibrancy faded instantly, her face drained, her eyes distant. "Is there a chill? Have I been dreaming?" "Let's go inside, Laura." Laura urged Carmilla to drink some wine, worried she might be falling ill like others nearby. If Papa suspected you were unwell, he'd call the doctor immediately. Carmilla brushed the worry aside. "I only suffer from an odd weakness. Sometimes I lose all strength, but it passes quickly. I'm fine now, see?" And indeed, her energy returned, and she grew lively again as the night went on. Yet Laura could not shake the strangeness, the uncanny portrait, Carmilla's fevered words, her sudden changes of mood. Later that night, something unexpected occurred, jolting both girls and hinting that the mysteries between them were far from over. After the unsettling events of the evening, Laura and Carmilla settled back into the drawing room. Carmilla seemed refreshed, chatting with Laura, her father, Madame, and Mademoiselle de La Fontaine, while card games and laughter filled the air. Laura's father joined later, sipping his tea with concern. He turned to Carmilla, asking, "Have you had word from your mother since coming here?" Carmilla answered softly, "No." Pressed about how her mother might reach her, she just shook her head. Hints of departure colored her voice as she added, "I think I should leave. You've been far too kind, and I've caused enough trouble. I wish to pursue my mother, though I cannot reveal her location just yet." Laura's father quickly protested. "You must not dream of leaving us, except under your mother's care. I accepted you on her word, and with this mysterious illness about, I can't be responsible without her approval. You must stay until we hear from her." Carmilla smiled bashfully, genuinely moved. "You have all made me so happy. I have rarely known such kindness." The old gentleman responded warmly, kissing her hand in his courtly way and marveling at her gratitude. That night, Laura accompanied Carmilla upstairs, the tension between curiosity and unease hovering as strongly as ever. Laura leaned in and asked, "Will you ever completely confide in me?" Carmilla turned, her eyes shining. "You don't know how dear you are to me. You have every right to ask, but I am bound by promises, vows that are stricter than any nun's. I can't share my story yet. The moment is coming. You'll think me selfish, but love is always selfish. I am so jealous, Laura. You have to come with me, even into death, loving or hating me. It doesn't matter. There is no room for indifference." Laura flushed, nervous. "Now, Carmilla, don't start with your nonsense." But Carmilla just smiled wistfully. "No more nonsense. Tell me, were you ever at a ball?" Laura grinned. "Never. What's it like?" Carmilla's voice became airy and distant. "I barely remember. I see it like a diver looks up at the surface, blurred and shifting. Something happened that night. I was nearly killed as I slept, wounded here." She touched her breast. "Since then, I've never been the same. Love is cruel. There's blood in every sacrifice." She soon grew drowsy, and Laura wished her good night, leaving with an unsettled feeling. Laura's mind returned to earlier suspicions. She'd never seen Carmilla pray. The guest always skipped family prayers and seemed indifferent to religion. There was a creeping sense of mystery and difference about Carmilla that Laura could not shake. As the night deepened, Laura adopted all of Carmilla's little habits, locking the door and checking the room for unseen threats. Her lamp burned bright, but sleep brought no comfort. Laura dreamed vividly. She was in her own room, only darker. A huge black cat prowled at her bed's edge, restlessly pacing. She tried to scream but could not. As the beast leapt onto her, its eyes burned, and Laura felt sharp pain, as if 2 needles pierced her chest. She woke screaming, heart thundering. By her bed stood a woman in dark dress, hair loose and heavy on her shoulders. The figure glided to the door and vanished. Laura rushed to check. Her door was locked from the inside. Terror-stricken, she dove beneath her covers and shivered there until dawn, haunted by the vision and the strange ache in her chest. Laura was plagued by a horror that clung to her long after her nightmare. Even her sunlit bedroom felt changed, haunted by the memory of the dark figure and the sharp pain in her chest. The following day, Laura found herself unable to be alone. Fearful her father would either dismiss her fears or panic about the mysterious illness nearby, she held her tongue around him, especially given his own fragile health. Instead, she gravitated to Madame Perrodon and the playful Mademoiselle La Fontaine, who quickly noticed Laura's nerves and pressed her to explain. At first, Mademoiselle tried to cheer her up with a playful story. "You know, Martin says that the lime tree walk is haunted. A woman in white always there before dawn." Madame tried to wave away the superstition, but Laura insisted. "Please, don't mention this to Carmilla. She frightens more easily than I do." Carmilla appeared late that morning, visibly shaken. "I was so frightened last night," she confided. "I dreamt something black was circling my bed, and then I saw a shape near the fireplace. Only touching my charm from the hunchback peddler made it go away." Laura shared her own harrowing tale, and Carmilla listened, wide-eyed. "Did you have your charm near you?" she asked urgently. Laura admitted she had left it in a vase, but promised, "Tonight I'll keep it close, if it means so much to you." That night, Laura pinned the charm to her pillow and slept deeply, dreamless but waking with a heavy, sweet melancholy. Carmilla delighted in this. "See? It's only a charm against malaria," she explained. "It's not magic, just meant to clear bad air. Surely evil spirits don't care about pretty ribbons." For days Laura slept soundly but woke weaker, increasingly shrouded in a gentle gloom. She felt herself drifting, not uncomfortably, into a state she couldn't name. The idea of death crept into her mind, a death strangely soft and inviting. Carmilla grew ever more attentive, her adoration so passionate that it sometimes startled Laura, spilling over with almost desperate affection. As the weeks passed, Laura's appearance changed. She grew pale and hollow-eyed. Though her father worried, she insisted she was fine, refusing doctors or fuss, swept along by an unnatural malaise. Carmilla complained too, but her symptoms seemed lighter, a vague fever, troubling dreams. Nights became strange, filled with a cold and pleasant sensation like drifting in a cold river. Laura's dreams grew longer and less clear, always shadowy and exhausting. She'd wake with echoing fear, remembering a woman's solemn voice whispering as if from deep inside her mind, and the sensation of caresses lingering on her skin, especially at her throat, until panic strangled her and she blacked out. Time blurred. About 3 weeks had passed since these symptoms began. One night, instead of the usual distant voice, she dreamed a new, sharper warning. "Your mother warns you to beware of the assassin." Light flooded her vision. She saw Carmilla standing at her bed, her nightgown drenched in blood from chin to toe. Laura awoke shrieking and panicked, certain that Carmilla was in mortal danger. She ran into the hallway, rallying Madame Perrodon and Mademoiselle La Fontaine from their rooms. Together, frantic, they knocked at Carmilla's door, calling her name. Silence. Laura's fear mounted. When there was still no answer, servants forced open the locked door and the party stormed in, holding lanterns aloft. The room was untouched, peaceful as ever. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of Carmilla. She had vanished without a trace. The room was utterly undisturbed, apart from the chaos of their search. As nerves settled, Mademoiselle suggested Carmilla might have hidden herself, perhaps in panic behind a curtain or inside a wardrobe, not daring to emerge with servants rushing about. They searched again, calling Carmilla's name into every corner. No answer. Laura pleaded, her voice trembling, "Carmilla, please, if you're hiding, end this cruel joke." But silence pressed in on them. Laura was left only with confusion. Had Carmilla discovered a secret passage in the ancient house? One of those hidden by time? Whatever the answer, she decided to wait, huddled with Madame for the rest of the night, until daylight could bring clarity. Dawn changed nothing. The whole household was in commotion. Laura's father led the frantic search of the estate, desperate for a sign. They scoured the château and combed the grounds. Servants were ready to drag the stream. "It's like she vanished into thin air," Mademoiselle whispered. Grief for Laura was sharp but private, different from her father's agony at the thought of reporting this to Carmilla's mother. Hours slipped by. Then, just past noon, Laura rushed into Carmilla's room, and there stood Carmilla, wholly unharmed, brushing her hair at the dressing table. Laura gasped, frozen in disbelief, then clasped Carmilla in a storm of relief and love. "Where have you been?" Laura cried, voice thick with emotion. "We were terrified for you." "Last night was a night of wonders," Carmilla replied, her face pale with fear. Laura pressed her. "You must tell us. What happened?" Calmly, but with confusion, Carmilla described her strange night. "It was well after 2 when I fell asleep, doors locked as always. I remember nothing until I woke just now, on the dressing room sofa, not in my bed. The door was forced open, but how? How could this have happened without waking me? I'm such a light sleeper." As Carmilla recounted her confusion, the others arrived, Laura's father, Madame Perrodon, Mademoiselle Lafontaine, and the servants. Questions poured in, but Carmilla's bewilderment seemed total. When the commotion faded, Laura's father sat beside her kindly, choosing his next words with care. "Will you forgive me for asking a direct question?" he said gently. Carmilla gave a shaky smile. "Of course. I know nothing, but ask what you will." "Have you ever walked in your sleep?" "Never, except when I was very young," she admitted. Her father explained, "Here's a simple answer. You may have slept-walked again, unlocked the door, wandered the halls. So many doors and hidden rooms here, we'd never search them all in a day. Do you see?" "I think so, but it still seems strange," Carmilla replied, uncertainty coloring her tone. He continued, "You could have gone to the dressing room after our search, waking there on the sofa, shocking us all. I wish all mysteries ended this tidily." Relief spread as the tension melted away. Carmilla's beauty, tinged now with languor, appeared even more striking beside Laura's pallor. Laura's father looked between them, his worry for Laura unavoidable. "If only Laura looked as healthy as you," he murmured with a sigh. So, by afternoon, Carmilla was restored, and the strange night given an all-too-human, if improbable, explanation. But deep beneath the joy, Laura's questions and Carmilla's fear lingered, unspoken in the quiet that returned to the estate. Ever since Carmilla's mysterious disappearance and return, her room had felt almost haunted. Refusing to let anyone sleep inside with her, Carmilla never lost her gentle stubbornness. But Laura's father took no more chances. A servant slept by Carmilla's door at night, ensuring she couldn't wander off without notice. That night, silence hung thick until sunrise, broken only by shadows and wary footsteps. In the early morning, Laura was summoned to the library, accompanied by Madame Perrodon. Waiting there was Dr. Spielsberg, an old, solemn man whose eyes seemed to see more than he ever said. Laura shared every detail, her strange dreams, the suffocating nights, faintness and dread. The doctor's gaze grew more serious with every word. He listened so intently that Laura felt truly seen, but also vulnerable under his careful scrutiny. After she finished, the doctor asked for Laura's father. Their hushed exchange by the window looked urgent. Laura and Madame, standing apart, could only guess what worried the men so much. When Laura was finally called over, her father squeezed her hand reassuringly, though his smile faltered. "Laura, the doctor needs you to recall something for us," he said, gentle but uneasy. "Do you still feel any pain where you described those needle-like pricks on your neck?" "No, none at all." She touched the spot just below her throat. "May I?" the doctor asked, gesturing politely. Laura nodded, letting her father adjust her dress collar. A small, chill blue spot appeared, a haunting reminder. Her father paled. "God bless me, so it is," he murmured. "What is it?" Laura pressed, fear sharpening her words. "Nothing serious, I hope," the doctor replied. "Just a bluish patch, the size of your fingertip. With care, you should recover soon." Still, the warning was clear. Laura should never be left alone. Madame promised to watch her closely, while Laura submitted to their care, her mind swirling with questions nobody wanted to answer. As they discussed the situation, Laura's father said, "There's another patient you must examine. Similar worries. Our guest, Carmilla. Perhaps you can see her this evening?" "Of course. I'll return at 7, promised the doctor before departing. A short time later, a letter arrived from General Spielsdorf, a beloved family friend. Laura's father read it, his expression troubled. She begged him for the truth, but he was evasive, only insisting, "If we take the right steps, you'll recover quickly, dear. Please don't trouble yourself yet." He stroked her hair, trying to reassure her. Then, changing the subject with forced cheer, he invited Laura and Madame to accompany him to Karnstein, promising a scenic trip through wild, beautiful countryside. The carriage ride twisted through woods and sunny glades. At a bend in the road, they encountered General Spielsdorf, dignified as ever, with a servant close at hand. After greetings, the general joined their carriage, his presence both welcome and strangely weighty. An old friend returning under a cloud of unknown worry, drawn together now by secrets and fears yet to be spoken. The family carriage rolled steadily along the winding road, the summer air heavy with a tension Laura could not name. General Spielsdorf sat nearby, his figure shrunken, his energy dimmed. The loss of his beloved niece, his late ward, seemed carved into his now gaunt face, deepening the craggy brows over his stormy blue eyes. He looked both haunted and furious, and Laura's father watched his friend with growing concern. The general broached his grief with soldierly bluntness. "My niece was lost to hellish arts," he declared, his voice feathered by bitterness and disbelief. "If you knew what we suffered, you would wonder how heaven allows such monsters to torment the living." Laura's father, ever rational and caring, tried to comfort him. "If it's not too painful, can you tell us what happened?" Spielsdorf hesitated, his voice prickling with frustration. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me," Laura's father replied, gently but firmly. "Old friends can surprise you with understanding." The general's hands shook as he described something harrowing, a conspiracy so unnatural, he admitted. "I never believed in such marvels before, but the evidence forced me to see what I wanted to deny." At this, Laura saw her father's eyes flicker, a trace of doubt crossing his face, but he quickly masked it, focusing on the general's every word. Spielsdorf soon changed the topic, staring at the shadows pooling in the woods ahead. "You go to Karnstein's ruins?" "We do," said Laura's father, heartened by the old friend's company, even under such a cloud. The general pressed on grimly. He spoke of the ruined chapel, the empty tombs, remnants of a dead family whose secrets still seemed to breathe in the desolate air. "I mean to open their tombs, unearth monsters, and rid the earth of them. It is a pious sacrilege, since honest people deserve peace at night." Laura looked between the two men. Her father was no longer skeptical, but alarmed. The name Karnstein was woven through their family history. Her father's late wife had been maternally descended from the Karnsteins, but nobody had set foot in the ruined village or castle in decades. Spielsdorf nodded, voice hollow. "It's all true. Let me tell you how it unfolded." He began to talk of his niece, so recently alive, beautiful and vibrant, now lost. Laura's father listened solemnly, offering the comfort of shared sorrow. The general's pale eyes brimmed with tears he did not bother to hide. She had brought light and cheer to his home, he confessed, and now that light had been snuffed out by forces beyond human understanding. "The years I have left, may they serve vengeance on those fiends," he muttered, voice shaking with conviction. Laura's father grew somber. "Would you please tell us from the beginning? We want to understand." They drew close to the ruins. The woods grew denser and the air colder. General Spielsdorf, glancing down the abandoned path, pressed his lips together with resolve. "It's just half a league away. I'll share everything." None spoke as the ancient stones of Karnstein came into view, and every heart in the carriage beat a little faster, bracing for tales that would test their courage and perhaps their sanity. General Spielsdorf collected himself and began recounting the strange tragedy that haunted him. His niece, whom he loved dearly, had been eagerly anticipating her planned visit to Laura. But first, they accepted an invitation to Count Carlsfeld's grand estate. The event was in honor of the Grand Duke Charles, famed for its extravagance. Lanterns glowed beneath the trees, fireworks burst in colors above the gardens, and the air pulsed with exquisite music. For a fleeting night, the world seemed enchanted. Spielsdorf watched fondly as his beautiful, unmasked niece enjoyed the festivities. Among the swirling guests, a young woman in a lavish mask repeatedly studied the general's ward. This masked girl moved through the opulent halls with another woman as her companion, older, regal, and exuding the composure of high birth. Curiosity stirred. The general noticed the masked pair drawing near. As his niece rested in a chair, the two women approached. The younger, later revealed to be named Millarca, sat beside her, while her chaperone stood at the general's side and softly addressed her charge. Moments later, the chaperone turned to Spielsdorf with alarming familiarity, referencing courtly gatherings and minor events long past. She expertly evaded all attempts to reveal her identity, playing with his memory and keeping her mask firmly in place. The general pressed, grinning. "You have puzzled me utterly. Would you perhaps remove your mask now?" She laughed. "Is any request more unfair? Besides, how can you be sure you'd even recognize me? Years change us all." He insisted gently, but she parried with wit and charm, hinting that time had aged her, and now she might not welcome comparison to younger memories. Every answer seemed designed to heighten his intrigue. Meanwhile, Millarca chatted with Spielsdorf's niece. Both girls warmed to each other instantly, their conversation playful, bright. Millarca praised her new friend's fashion and wit, admired her beauty, and critiqued the masked crowd with easy humor. As they talked, Millarca lowered her mask, revealing an astonishingly lovely face that magnetized the young girl's attention. As the general continued his polite interrogation of the chaperone, he tried another question. "At least tell me, are you French or German? You speak both so well." With a sly smile, she refused. "I don't think I shall tell you that, General. You plan a surprise, I can tell." Their exchange was abruptly interrupted by a man in severe black, his skin nearly corpse-like yet elegant, who approached and bowed gravely. "Will Madame la Comtesse allow me a few words that may interest her?" he asked. The Comtesse silenced him with a gesture, then turned to the general. "Keep my place for me, General. I'll return after a word." She drifted away with a pale stranger, conversing with intent, their forms swallowed by the gathering. Left behind, Spielsdorf stewed over the riddle of her identity. Just as he considered eavesdropping on the girls, the Comtesse returned, still trailed by the mysterious man in black. "I shall inform Madame la Comtesse when her carriage is ready," the stranger intoned, before bowing out. In that brief encounter, the air had shifted. What began as a night of wonders now carried an unshakable chill. The pieces of the dark pattern were only beginning to fall into place. After the masked ball, General Spielsdorf watched the Countess make her final preparations with an enigmatic urgency. She explained she might be gone for a few hours, or possibly weeks. Her sudden departure triggered by grim news that had just reached her. Despite the general's persistent curiosity, the Countess's identity remained a mystery. She only promised that in 3 weeks' time she would return to his estate and reveal everything, hinting at a past friendship that he could not remember. Yet before hurrying away, she made a startling request. With an air that was both gracious and commanding, the Countess implored the general to care for her daughter, Millarca, while she undertook a life-or-death journey. She painted Millarca as delicate, her nerves rattled from a recent riding accident, unfit for such stressful travel. Almost as if fate itself conspired, Spielsdorf's own niece appeared at that moment, pleading that Milarka stay with them. The two girls had already become fast friends, and Milarka's beauty and wit had charmed them both. Caught off guard, the general agreed. "I'll be happy to look after Milarka until you return," he said, uncertain but swayed by the girl's gentle presence and the Countess's flattering confidence. The Countess called Milarka to her, explaining the urgent situation and the plans she had set in motion. "Trust the general. He's one of my oldest friends," she assured her daughter. The pale gentleman in black returned and escorted the Countess out with ceremony that left no doubt about her standing. The last thing the Countess insisted upon was secrecy. "You and your daughter must not reveal more than I have permitted until I come back," she urged the general, who reluctantly promised to respect her wishes. With a whispered goodbye and a pair of hurried kisses, she melted into the gathering and was gone. Milarka, longing for one last glimpse, led them to a window. They watched as the Countess, cloaked and hooded, climbed into a carriage flanked by servants. Milarka sighed, murmuring, "She is gone." Spielsdorf echoed her words, unease resting heavy on his mind now that his promise weighed upon him. Trying to mask his regret, Spielsdorf excused the Countess's absence. Perhaps she didn't look up so as not to reveal herself after removing her mask, he said gently. Milarka only looked at him, those luminous eyes full of longing and loss. Soon, Milarka managed to cheer them all. She walked the terrace with the general and his niece, filling the night air with lively gossip about the party guests and tales from high society. Spielsdorf, feeling old and out of place, found himself delighted by her sharp humor and vibrant presence. He began to imagine how much life she'd bring to their usually quiet home. As dawn crept over the estate, the festivities finally waned. Amid the crowd, they realized Milarka had slipped from their side. Alarmed, Spielsdorf searched everywhere, but the girl had vanished. Bound by his promise of secrecy, he could not even ask for her by name. Hours later, relief and dread warred inside him when news came. Milarka was safe and searching for her guardians too. She explained that she'd grown weary, stumbled into the housekeeper's room, and slept deeply until morning. With that, Milarka came home with them, her charm disarming all of Spielsdorf's anxieties for the moment. But a tremor of doubt lingered, as if by opening his home to this enchanting stranger, he'd unwittingly set fate turning down a darker road. As Milarka settled into the general's home, what once seemed like an enchanting arrangement began to unravel. Milarka complained more often of exhaustion. She refused to appear before afternoon, claiming her strength hadn't fully returned after her accident. But an odd detail unsettled everyone. Though she locked her bedroom door from inside each night, she was repeatedly spotted walking through the woods at dawn, her pale figure drifting eastward like a dreamer in a trance. The household grew convinced she was sleepwalking, but the locked door made no sense. How could she leave her room without unlocking it and escape the house without disturbing a single latch? Even as these mysteries mounted, a far greater dread invaded the home. The general's beloved niece, who had befriended Milarka most, began wasting away. Her health declined with shocking speed. First came the nightmares, in which a shimmering spectre, sometimes Milarka, sometimes a shifting beast, padded around her bed. Nights brought stranger sensations. The girl described a pulse of freezing water over her chest, and, later, sharp pains below her throat, as though pierced by needles. Eventually, her breathing would halt in the night, her body seized by a choking terror before she was lost to unconsciousness. In the present, the general's carriage rumbled toward a ruined, abandoned village nestled in thick woodland. The narrator, now herself uneasy, marveled at how the general's tale mirrored her own recent decline, and how Milarka, so mysterious, matched the habits of their guest Carmilla. As they toured the shattered castle and looked out over sweeping ruins, the general's mood turned grim. So this was the home of the Karnsteins, Their evil outlives them, the general observed, peering down at the overgrown chapel. Now they haunt us still. My family keeps a portrait of Mircalla, Countess Karnstein, at home, the narrator's father offered, curious. Portraits aside, I believe I've seen the real countess, replied the general. It's her grave I seek. There is a revenge I mean to take, thanks to what I've witnessed. Her father looked confused, watching the old man's anger quicken. What on earth? What vengeance do you mean? To decapitate the monster, stormed the general. He raised his hand as if to swing an axe. She'll fall by mortal hands with an axe or whatever I find. The narrator's father recoiled in disbelief, but the general pressed on, promising to finish his harrowing tale. They paused at the ruined chapel and called over a woodman working among fallen branches. The woodman, an old man hardened by years in the forest, listened to their questions about the Karnstein graves. He couldn't help, but offered to fetch a local ranger who knew the graveyard's secrets if they'd lend him a horse. With time short, they pressed the woodman for stories. He admitted that his family had lived in the village for generations, witnessing its abandonment long ago. The village was plagued by revenants, unquiet dead, he said. Many were dug up, beheaded, burned, but it didn't end. Not until a Moravian nobleman, skilled in battling such monsters, came to help. The woodman recounted how, by moonlight, the noble watched a vampire slip from its grave to torment the living. He stole the monster's linen wrappings and taunted it to climb to the tower. When the vampire reached him, the nobleman cut it down, beheaded it, and delivered the remains to be burned, finally freeing the village. The tomb of Mircalla, Countess Karnstein, was said to be destroyed and its site forgotten. Pressed for the tomb's whereabouts, the woodman only shook his head. Not a soul alive could find it now, and perhaps her body's long since moved. He left them in the chapel's shadow, a chill hanging over the company, as the promise of the general's dreadful tale lingered in the air. The general's beloved wart was deteriorating fast, her vitality draining away while the doctors stood baffled. The family's trusted physician called in a renowned expert from Graz. When the new doctor finally arrived, his presence ignited a heated debate. The old physician clung to his diagnosis, but the doctor from Graz scoffed, "My learned brother seems to think you want a conjurer, not a doctor." A tense silence fell as the Graz doctor, tight-lipped, jotted notes in a letter for the general, who watched helplessly. Once the bickering experts left, he nearly despaired. Desperate, the general conferred with the visiting doctor in the gardens. With grave insistence, he said, "No known disease acts this way. Death is very near, but there might be time. You must read my letter, with a priest present if you want hope." But with the priest absent, the general broke the seal alone. His heart sank as he read the bizarre diagnosis. "Your ward is the prey of a vampire." The details were chilling, all the symptoms, the wasting pallor, and especially those punctures at her throat, were spelled out as vampires work. The letter advised bold action, set aside disbelief. If anything could save the girl, it was following the letter's odd instructions. That night, the general hid in the dressing room, sword ready. The household slept as he watched by a candle's dim glow. At 1 in the morning, something black and shapeless slithered across the bed. It coiled about the girl's throat, swelling like a grotesque nightmare. With a shout, the general charged. The black shape drew back and resolved itself into Milarca's form, lurking by the bed with eyes burning. As he struck, she vanished to the far side of the room. He chased, sword flashing, but she slipped away. His blow struck only air and splintered wood as Milarca disappeared into the night. The house was quickly roused, but it was too late. The girl's life ebbed away before dawn, beyond saving. Telling the story left the general spent, silent with grief as Laura's father wandered among ancient tombstones. Laura herself waited, uneasy in the shadowy, vine-tangled ruins. She welcomed the sound of Carmilla's and Madame's voices, but soon only the slow hush of the chapel remained. The air was thick with memories of the general's tale, and with dread for her own fate. At last, Carmilla appeared, radiant as ever, gliding beneath the arched Gothic doorway. Even before Laura could greet her, the general cried out, springing forward with the woodman's hatchet in hand. For one split second, Carmilla's beauty twisted into something cold and monstrous as she leapt back, dodging the blow. In a blur, she seized his wrist, forcing him to drop the axe. Then, she was gone. The room filled with panic. Madame rushed in, demanding, "Where is Mademoiselle Carmilla?" Laura, trembling, could only stammer, "She went that way, just a minute ago." But Madame insisted, "I was in the hall. She didn't come out." They called her name through the corridors and windows, but there was only silence. Still shaking, the general turned to Laura, eyes wide. "She called herself Carmilla?" Laura nodded. "Yes, Carmilla." The general's face hardened. "That is Millarca. That is Mircalla, Countess Karnstein." He urged Laura to flee the cursed grounds at once and take refuge with the nearby priest. "Go quickly, child. Pray you never see Carmilla again, for she is gone from here, and may it forever remain so." As Laura clung to her father's side, an odd and memorable figure shuffled into the ruined chapel. A tall, bony man with a hollow chest, stooping shoulders, unruly grey hair, and a perpetually distracted smile. His coat and even gloves seemed several sizes too large, and he gestured aimlessly as he walked, gold spectacles perched awkwardly on his nose. This was Baron Vordenburg, beloved by scholars but little seen in society, consulted for his expertise in old superstitions and the secrets of the dead. The general called out in sudden relief, "The very man! Baron, you have come at the perfect time." Moments later, Laura's father joined them, and the three men huddled over a faded map Baron Vordenburg produced. He pointed out invisible lines and whispered to the general, "There, on your chapel's wall, hides the tombstone you seek." His finger hovered over the marble, lips whispering names from a battered, yellowed book. Working together, they tore away a tangle of ivy and scraped the old stones until a monument emerged, the long-lost resting place of Mircalla, Countess Karnstein. The general pressed his palms together and gazed upward in silent thanks, overwhelmed. "Tomorrow the commissioner arrives," he announced, voice trembling. "The Inquisition will be held, and at last this monster will meet justice." Turning to the Baron, he gripped his hands. "You have freed us from a curse that's lasted over 100 years. While the men whispered in private, Laura waited uncertainly, still shaken by Carmilla's vanishing. Her father kissed her forehead and murmured, "We must gather the priest and return home. Safety demands his blessing tonight." Night fell, and the house felt different. A fortress with servants and Madame awake in Laura's room, and Laura's father and the priest keeping vigil in the next chamber. The priest moved in solemn silence, performing rituals Laura could not decipher, casting protective shadows across the walls. She lay exhausted, relief slowly replacing dread as she realized the nightly terror had vanished with Carmilla. A few days later, answers arrived. The community's age-old horror, the vampire myth, was more than just whispers this time. Commissions had investigated, doctors attended to the details, and nothing, Laura thought, could explain her ordeal except that ancient curse. The following day, the chapel brimmed with uneasy excitement. Officials, doctors, and the key families gathered for the opening of Mircalla's grave. To their shock, the Countess's corpse looked untouched by time, her skin tinged with life, eyes open and terrible, body afloat in a pool of blood. A doctor placed his hand to her chest. "There's a heartbeat, however faint. Is such a thing possible?" The other physician shook his head. "It is, as the old stories say, everything matches the vampire's legend." The woodman raised a stake. With one powerful blow, he drove it through Mircalla's heart. The tomb was filled with a chilling, almost human scream. The executioners finished the grisly work, removing the head, letting the blood drain away, then burning the remains to ash and scattering them upon the river. The evil would not return. No more vampires haunted Styria. Laura's suffering ended with Mircalla's fiery end, leaving only the shadows and scars to haunt her memory. Her father kept the signed records of the commission, proof of what their family had endured. For Laura, the world was brighter, but forever marked by the chilling truth that sometimes the oldest nightmares are real. Laura could hardly bring herself to write any of this. Her hands still shook each time she remembered, and the fear Carmilla left behind shadowed her nights for years. She only sat down to record the story because a beloved friend had pleaded so many times. Still, giving shape to those memories made her skin crawl. Odd reclusive Baron Vordenberg stayed on in Styria after Carmilla's end. Though from a family now fallen into poverty, his life's work was the study of vampirism. His rooms in Graz overflowed with rare books and manuscripts, their titles unpronounceable, the pages thick with strange knowledge. He had painstakingly catalogued all the old cases and sharpened the blurry legends of the past into chilling, precise facts. The vampire doesn't appear as a ghost or skeleton, he explained to Laura and her father. They look perfectly alive, even beautiful. In the grave or walking among us, they show no pallor, none of the melodrama you would expect. She shivered. But they drain the will, bit by bit, with a patience that's almost loving. Baron Vordenberg knew every eerie law that governed vampires, how they rarely left marks when entering or leaving a grave, how they lived between the grave and the waking world, how their hunger was for particular people. A vampire becomes obsessed, like a lover. They'll wait, they'll find a way, patience or trickery, until they've had their fill. He took special interest in Mircalla's pattern. Her name was always preserved through clever disguises. Carmilla Millarca. Laura's father once asked, "But Baron, how did you even know where to find her tomb?" The Baron smiled that faraway smile, eyes twinkling behind smudged spectacles. "My ancestor left journals. He loved Mircalla once. When she died and was reborn as a vampire, he tried to protect her, even in death. He moved her grave, hid her monument. When regret finally claimed him in old age, he wrote everything down for a future with the courage to face the evil. That courage, I suppose, turned out to be ours." He went on to explain, "Often, vampires spring from suicides or those cursed in life. They pass on their condition by preying on the living in nightmares, and once suspicion falls, as it did on Mircalla, there's a gruesome ritual that must be done." One detail haunted Laura. "You must know another sign, miss. Vampires possess inhuman strength in their hands. When Carmilla, Mircalla, grabbed the general's wrist, it was like being chained in iron. He will never fully recover from the numbness it left." Laura could not help but rub her arm as he spoke, the ghost of Carmilla's touch prickling beneath the skin. After the horror, Laura's father whisked her away to Italy for over a year. Beauty and sunshine couldn't quite erase her memories, but eventually the grip of nightmare faded to a persistent ache. Still, some days, especially as twilight folded over the hills, Laura imagined she saw Carmilla again. Sometimes as the gentle, playful companion she'd adored. Sometimes as the dreadful creature writhing in the half-light. More than once, she paused at the drawing-room door, half expecting that soft footfall, that sweet, uncanny smile to be waiting on the other side. Thank you for joining us on this eerie voyage through Carmilla. We hope the blend of narration and illustrations deepened your experience of Le Fanu's timeless vampire tale. More unforgettable classics are on their way. If you liked this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you are first to know when the next story arrives.